Hey everybody, I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the word. And today that word is regret. Regret. Now, if I ask you, here if you're watching these daily, today's Monday, if I ask you, well, have you ever done anything you've regretted? Well, I'm sure this would be a great time for us to think about that and look back and say, yeah, I really don't want to think about that. That's not the way I want to start off my week here, looking in the past. But as we've been talking about Balaam here in the past couple of days, and then also looking through prayers and conversations with God, there's a lot about Balaam and a lot that the New Testament shows us about him and that he was wrong and that he had wrong motives and sinful in his ways and is compared and brought up basically, as people say, in going in the way of Balaam, talking in a negative way, as talking about in Jude, even talking about the apostasy that was going on. So keep that in the back of your mind as we talk about Balaam. But even understand this, that any one of us could be doing the same things. That God could be speaking to us, we're speaking to him. But if we're not careful, we could be doing things out of our own free will and not out of the urging of the Holy Spirit, not doing things according to his will and his way. So today in Numbers chapter 22, we're just going to look at verses 34 and 35. But as we look at regret, and as Balaam is going, and you've seen, as always, I encourage you to read all this because I just deal with little portions of the passage. He's going back and forth about whether he's going to go with them, whether he's not. He's seeking what the Lord wants him to do, as we talked about at the end of last week. But he goes back and forth. Let me go back to God, see what he says. But now, as he's going, God is upset with him, and so he sends the angel of the Lord to intervene and get in his way. Well, now this donkey that Balaam is riding on, the donkey sees the angel, but Balaam does not, and essentially the donkey rather saves his life. Even begins to talk to him in this passage. And I always thought it was funny that I think that Balaam was so upset and so angered that he didn't even care that the donkey was talking back to him, because he begins to respond to the donkey. But then when his eyes are opened, and see, isn't that just like you and I? When our eyes are open to see what God is trying to keep us from, what God is trying to protect us from, what God is trying to show us, I think then we might have words like Balaam said in Numbers chapter 22, verses 34 through 35. He says, "And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. For I did not know that you stood in the way against me. Now, therefore, if it displeases you, I will turn back." Then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Now go with the men, but only the word that I speak to you, that you shall speak." So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. Now, that's going to be, we're going to talk about that even the next day or so, of him actually saying what the Lord had said. But I wonder how often we take a moment to stop and say, God, I'm sorry. God, I didn't realize that you were trying to get my attention. I wonder how much of our prayer is really a laundry list of things we want to try to accomplish in heaven, instead of trying to take a few moments to see what God is trying to work out in our lives, God is trying to work out in our relationships, and most importantly, our relationship with Him. Just to stop and say, God, I'm sorry, I have sinned. And if you don't want me to go any further in this direction, with this path that I'm going, Lord, let me turn back now. Now, there's something else going on here. God is going to use Balaam. So he says, no, you're going to go on, but you're only going to say what I tell you to. And we'll talk about that later. But I wonder really how often we come to God in prayer saying, God, you know what? I've messed up. But you know that we serve a God in heaven who knows our flaws, knows our faults, knows our weaknesses. And it's in those weaknesses, as Paul writes, that his strength is made perfect. He says, so I'll even boast in my weaknesses. I'll boast in the fact that I can't do it, because that means that he can. And that I don't have to do it, but that he will do it. So I pray that today that you're not trying to push that donkey on further ahead. I pray that you're not pushing that struggle further than it should be going when God the whole time is trying to protect you. Maybe even perhaps, as it was in the case with Balaam, the donkey was trying to save his life. Maybe that problem you're facing today, maybe that struggle you're facing or that's coming around the bend later on is protecting you from something far worse. We never know. We know that God is in control, so we never quite know and understand what it may be, but we know that we can trust in Him with all things. And I'd rather be living that way so that we can look back and say that no, in that matter of speaking, I have no regrets. Yes, I regret my sin, I regret my shortcomings. But as it comes to following God, that we can look back over the days of our lives and the days of the struggles and say, no, I have no regrets. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.